When is a bourbon no longer a bourbon? When it's finished. That is a terrible joke. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, that was a very cheesy joke in the introduction, but it was factually correct. What we've got here today is Angel's Envy, and it is a finished bourbon. Now, when any whiskey is finished, it just means that the whiskey's been put into a different type of cask to finish the product, and that is normally a cask or barrel that has held some other kind of spirit before it. In the case of this Angel's Envy, it is finished in port wine barrels, and technically that makes it not a bourbon. It is technically, if we have a read of the label, a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey finished in port wine barrels, and they do need to put that final bit in there because, of course, bourbon can only be bourbon if it's been aged in freshly charred oak barrels, and well, of course, this hasn't entirely. But of course, before it went into those port wine barrels, it was, so yeah, is and isn't. Anyway, this is the first time for me trying it. It's been around for a while, and I'll give you a little bit of history on the brand in a moment. But yeah, it's been available in the UK for a bit. I've had this bottle actually for a few months, and for some reason it's just kind of not been opened yet. I've been saying that a lot recently. I'm trying to get pretty much every bottle in my collection open because, well, it is something to enjoy and not necessarily just to sit around and save. So yeah, trying to get a few more bottles open. As I said, this though is from the cellars of Lincoln Henderson. We'll get into him a bit more later. Angel's Envy, a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey finished in port wine barrels, coming in at 43.3%. or 86.6 proof. So it's only a smidge over your regular 40-80 bottles, but, well, a smidge is sometimes all you need. So who was Lincoln Henderson? Well, he was the master distiller at Woodford Reserve. Woodford Reserve, though, are owned by the Brown-Forman Group, who also own Jack Daniels, and Lincoln Henderson also had a hand in making Gentleman Jack, which we can argue about whether that's a good thing or not, but also Jack Daniels single barrel, and that, well, that most definitely is a good thing. As a result, Lincoln Henderson is considered something of a visionary in American whiskey, and back in 2006 he went and opened up his own distillery, Angel's Envy, along with his son Wes Henderson. Of course, bourbon takes a while to age and actually get to be a ready product, and as a result the first bottles weren't released until 2011, and that product is exactly what I've got in front of me today, although I'm sure this one was produced a little bit more recently. One thing though that is particularly interesting about this stuff is that it's actually blended twice. For those that don't know, unless it's a single barrel, most whiskies and bourbons are blended from a few barrels from that same distillery to make kind of something that produces a consistent and, yeah, you know, kind of quality controlled product. And well, they actually do that twice with this. They quality control it or blend it prior to going into those port wine casks, and then again afterwards. So it's effectively double blended, but that's not a bad thing in this instance. As I've already said, this is a 43.3% whiskey or 86.6 proof. Allegedly, its mash bill is 72% corn, 18% rye and 10% barley, which makes it relatively rye heavy, but also pretty corn heavy. So sweetness or spiciness could come through here, and the current going price for this in the UK is between £50 and £60. If you're paying more than £60, you're probably getting ripped off. It is occasionally available at a little bit less, so keep an eye out. But yeah, whether that's worth it or not, well, we can discuss that after we've tried it. Before we break into it, a quick look at the bottle. It is a beautiful thing. Proper, it barely fits on the camera screen when I put it forward, look. But yeah, absolutely glorious looking thing. Being international market, we get slightly ripped off with the 700ml rather than the 750 it is in the US, but at least the ABV is the same. And if I flip it round onto the back, it's actually got the angel wings kind of etched there, which it's a stunning looking bottle on the shelf. There is some more info on the side there. What does this say? Angel's Envy, all bourbons are aged in charred white oak barrels that respect the Angel's Envy is just like every other bourbon. However, unlike others, Angel Envy spends the last 6 months in port wine casks, giving it a complex flavour you won't find anywhere else. Indulge and discover distilled descent. And for those that might be interested, this is batch number, it looks like 70U, and the bottle number is 14824, and there's also a place to write when you uncorked it on, which is pretty handy, so you know how long it's been around for. But yeah, handy stuff. The dreaded plastic cap. fun sound. Aroma's in the room already. It smells, yeah, sweet and kind of port-like actually. Probably not a surprise. Okay, it's got good colour on it. It's not the darkest, but definitely not the lightest thing out there. It's got a nice kind of deep, dulled orange hue to it. I mean, ultimately, unless you're comparing whiskies side by side, I always find the visual a little bit kind of I don't know, a bit of a mute point, but it looks the business, especially when it comes to bourbon anyway, because obviously they've all got a pretty decent amount of colour on them. But yeah, not a bad looking thing whatsoever. In the glass, it's not quite got the, I was about to say it's not quite got the ABV to have some legs on it, but actually there are one or two knocking around. That aroma is exciting, I'm not going to lie. Like, it's got a really jammy, juicy, fruity, grapes, raisins, sultanas, that kind of thing going on, all from those port casks, I have no doubt. And it does retain a few bourbon notes though. It's like the way it delivers the heat is distinctly bourbon, which is going to sound probably a little bit mad, but yeah, there's definitely the ethanol, the alcohol burn. It's kind of definitely reminding me of more bourbon things than anything else. And there's a really soft oakiness to it. Lots of sugar, almost, oh, hold on. Dig around, you find like a proper bit of properly natural vanilla. Like a lot of bourbons have a vanilla sweetness, but it's like more candied, whereas this has got like a rough and proper, yeah, raw kind of vanilla pod edge to it. It's soft though, it's subtle. A little bit sugar syrupy, kind of dark honey maple syrup vibes. It's quite, yeah, it's there, it's sweet, but it's got a nice toasty edge to it, and it actually doesn't smell too sweet. It smells like it's got enough fruitiness and enough kind of more savoury, oaky notes to keep it balanced. But it'll be interesting to find out. Trying Angel's Envy for the first time. Let's give it a go. Cheers. Okay. It's a bit weird. In a good way. Like, it's definitely a step away from your regular bourbon. It's definitely got some other notes in there because of those port wine casks. But I have heard people in the past describe this as just being too sweet. Like, it's a sweet whiskey to start with, and then the sweetness from the port fruit, it just becomes just too one-dimensional. I'm getting a really, really savoury, kind of woody, almost nutty finish to this that just helps balance it off. It's not the best balanced thing, I'll be honest. It feels a little bit thin in places. Like, it's not coating my mouth quite like I'd like it to. I'm maybe not getting the full breadth of some of the flavours in here, but yeah, it's definitely very nice. Let's try and detail this. So, right on the tip of the tongue, proper, deep, fruity. It's rich, also quite like approachably sweet though. Like, it's almost got a bit of a bubblegummy thing right up front there, which is a little bit odd. And then kind of over the mid palate, much richer fruit, real vanilla. There's a real toastiness to it, but it's like just the bitterness from toastiness rather than like a big depthy burn kind of thing. I'm not really sure where to put that. It's almost like overly toasted tortillas. Finish though is properly clean. Nice kind of bitter refresher. Like, again, it has got this very, like, it cuts off real quick and you're left with this slightly sweet, hints of caramel, hints of vanilla, and a shed load of red berry, grape, raisin, sultana, the wine cask finish stuff. It's very nice. I think this is a proper summer outdoor barbecue sipping whiskey for me. Like, it's not giving me the depth, the enrichment. This time of year, it's cold. I want a bit more from it. I want a bit more warmth. I want a bit more just indulgence. It's not that. But actually, I think it is pretty well balanced. And when it's another 30 degrees warmer outside and all the rest of it, yeah, I think that will go down very, very well indeed. I'll be interested to put this up against some other things like it. If you've got any thoughts what I should pitch this against, let me know please in the comments below, because I'm not quite sure yet what to compare it to, but there's got to be something out there worth a go. Even if it's not a finished product, a port cask or otherwise, I'll be interested to see. But yeah, it's I think this is going to grow on me. I feel like I can pick out flaws with the physical experience of it, but that could just be an ABV thing. If they do a cask strength one, well, maybe that'll be even better. But the actual balance, the flavour profile, everything else is pretty damn good, if I'm honest. There we go then. My first time trying Angel's Envy, and It is kind of exactly what I thought it would be, but even more refined in some ways. It feels like a distinctly, I don't want to say a distinctly different product to bourbon. It feels like a very distinct and purposeful evolution. It's not just someone's taken some bourbon, put it in a cask and gone, whatever flavour it takes, sell it on. It feels like it's been curated and, yeah, purposely done. It is a bit more winey, it's a bit more refreshing, it's a bit less intense. And actually, it's not a bad thing. You just need to be aware of that before you buy a bottle, because if you're thinking, you know, it's going to be enriched and boldened, and well, it is, but only in actual flavour notes, not in kind of consistency, volume, and the rest of it. So, yeah, it's a properly interesting one. I like this very much. As I say, be interesting to see what else I can put it up against. But yeah, I think I'll probably be saving the rest of that bottle for summer. Otherwise, yeah, no real complaints. And that is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you would be so kind. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.